Welcome to The Intentional Exit, a leadership legacy podcast for those who don't just want to retire, but want to do it well. I'm Rebecca Schriver, and this is where we help you protect what you've built, reduce unnecessary taxes, and create a plan that gives you clarity, confidence, and control. So together, we make sure your exit is not accidental, it's intentional. Before we begin, please note that the information shared in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be interpreted as tax, legal, or financial advice. For guidance specific to your situation, we recommend consulting with a qualified professional. Congratulations, you, my friend, have a pension, and therefore most people would think that you've won in the retirement race. And even though we've talked about income replacement in retirement and how a pension is really hard to beat, you know there could actually be some problems with the organization of having a pension versus having a bucket of money. And so today on episode 12, we are going to look at this retirement pension and how you can optimize it instead of just sleepwalking into retirement. I'm Rebecca Schriver. This is The Intentional Exit, and today is all about pensions. So, a pension, right? Like that is kind of the golden nugget that most people do not get to experience in retirement these days, simply because the world has moved away from pensions and moved into 401ks and IRAs. Why did that happen? Well, we know that a pension can be a very expensive thing for a company to try to keep up with. We've actually seen companies struggle and even fail to have pensions that they promised. So if you have one, definitely consider that you are extremely lucky. However, whenever we're looking at this, we need to look at it from an optimization standpoint. So what does that mean? If you're married, or even if you have children, then you want to leave something behind. And that asset is often determined by your life or by your and your spouse's life. And so they'll give you several different options. Okay, so you can get the full amount, but if you pass away, then your spouse doesn't get anything. Or you can get a slightly less amount. And then, if you pass away, your spouse gets 50%. Or you could get an equal amount for you and your spouse, but that's an even further decreased amount. And so then you're silently sitting there kind of judging whose health is better, right? How long will I live? What's the age difference? How long did your parents live? Well, how long did my parents live? And you sit there trying to orchestrate your money based on a crystal ball that says, hey, this is how long I plan to live. But what we see is that that doesn't always play out the way that you think. Maybe there's an unexpected illness or something that has never come up in the past that all of a sudden you're facing. And no matter which direction you go, whether you say, nope, I'm going to take the full payout and we're just going to ride the wave, or I'm going to make sure that we each get an equal amount because that's what's fair, then you could be wrong no matter which option you choose. Or could you be right? And today we want to talk about how can we be right? In every person's situation, it looks completely different. So if you're a married couple, right, and you're looking at how do I provide for my spouse, a lot of times if your health is good enough, what we can do is look at that pension, right, and look at the full amount, okay? So that amount that we only get if you are the only person who is guaranteed an income over your lifetime, and that we're not actually combining these things, we're just basing it off of one person's life. Because oftentimes the difference between providing for a spouse and providing for yourself is fairly significant. And so you're talking a lot of times between 5, 6, 7, I've seen as much as almost $1,000 different if we provide for one person instead of two on a monthly basis. And so if we take the full amount, right, and we don't necessarily worry about what the spouse gets, if your health is good enough, we can use part or a good chunk of the extra money that you're receiving on a monthly basis to create a life insurance plan, cheap one, right? We're talking term most likely, but to use it to create a life insurance plan to hedge against if you die early. And so there are a couple key ingredients here. The first key ingredient is we don't have to time who's going to die first, right? We know if the person who has earned the pension dies first, we then have a death benefit that is tax-free that will go to the beneficiaries. If the spouse dies first and we already have this life insurance policy, we can do one of two things. Either A, we can stop paying for it. Maybe we just decide we don't need it anymore. Or B, we can continue to pay for that and have the death benefit be there for the kids, right? And so if you're able to organize it this way and you're able to put in that life insurance policy that maybe only takes up a portion of the additional dollars on the pension, we've really created a way for you to win on both sides, right? Because on a monthly basis, you're getting more than you otherwise would, right? You're receiving more, and that time value of money is monumental. There is a lot to that. You having those extra dollars to be either able to put away into savings, or maybe to make a repair on the house earlier rather than later, or to, get a car, or to help pay for health insurance. Those dollars really matter. Also, most pensions have a COLA. So it's not just the initial, right? The initial bump of that money, but it is the increase on the larger amount of money each and every year as that cost of living adjustment takes hold. And so if we don't just at face value, right, take the options that your pension company is offering you and thinking that those are the only ways that we could possibly ever look at our retirement, and we actually look outside of it, and we look outside of ourselves, and we look at, oh, wait, there is a whole world of tools that we could use to our advantage, then you can get it set up to where you're actually structuring yourself properly for the long haul. Here's the other thing that but maybe you're not thinking about. That pension plan that you're receiving is going to be taxed. And so I had a couple in here just a little bit ago, and funny enough, even though this was going to be our next episode, didn't matter, that was what was on the schedule, he immediately sat down because he happens to be a city employee and he happens to be looking at taking his pension in the next couple years. And he started talking to me about how big of a decision this is, how hard it is to kind of adjust and to decide what's right, because, who's going to die first, whose health is better. All the questions we just talked about are things that he's really facing. And there's 3 or 4 different guys that he works with. They've all been there about the same amount of years. They're all about the same age. And so I just told him, I said, listen, let's sit down and work through it together. Let's get some underwriting done. Let's find out if you can supplement your spouse's loss of that pension. If we decide to take the full amount, let's see if you're healthy enough to make it happen. Let's see if we can make all of this work. And if the answer is no, you know it, and then you can make a really educated decision. If the answer is yes, and we can, then we can start today to get the things put in place so it won't be guesswork down the road, because we know that your intentional exit deserves more than guesswork, right? It deserves intention. You're going to own this retirement, right? It's yours. Your daily life is going to be dedicated to the money that you have coming in, right? If you have less money coming in, you have less options. If you have more money coming in and you don't have to worry about your spouse losing that, you have more options, which means what? You have less stress. I mean, isn't that what the security of it is all about, right? The reason that people take a lesser amount is because they're choosing security for their family in the long term. But if you have a new option and you can actually take more money and replace your spouse's check in the future and create a self-funded pension for that future, then aren't you in a much better position because you get more money, you're creating tax-free dollars for your spouse should you die early, and on top of all of those things, you are taking back your keys, you are controlling the outcome, and you're going to be able to sleep at night. These are all good things. And so I realize that this is a very short episode, but whenever it comes to pensions, there are just a few key ingredients that we want to take into account. There are a few key ingredients that we want to kind of put together and stack together to make it make a lot of sense. And we want you to have the keys. We want you to have the control and the confidence and the clarity around making these decisions and stop judging each other's health and your life expectancy. If this has been of value to you, then this has been doing exactly what it was designed to do. Please remember that this is not to be used as legal, tax, or financial advice. However, we would love to sit down with you and talk through how you can maximize your pension, get as many dollars as possible, and still protect the ones you love. I'm Rebecca Schriver. This is The Intentional Exit, and we thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.